everybody, and welcome to another board game review and gameplay demo. Today I've got a really fun racing game that I'm very excited to talk to you about, but before I really get started, if you haven't done so already, please take a look at all of my various social media pages where I post my new videos after I release them, as well as fun contests, giveaways, articles, and all sorts of other cool stuff. In addition, you can check out my Patreon page. If you decide to become a patron for me, then you'll be able to see videos ahead of time before I release them. In addition, you'll also be able to vote on new videos and all sorts of other cool stuff. That said, getting right down to it, today I'm going to be talking about Downforce. This is one of the games that I got at Gen Con this year, and I've been wanting to do a review on it essentially ever since I played it. This is a racing game that plays between 2 to 6 people and only takes about a half hour to 45 minutes. It's really quick and a lot of fun. You've got a racing mechanic that uses cards and a betting mechanic where essentially even if you're not winning, you can still win the game. But that said, the game itself is from Restoration Games. This is a revamp of something from, I believe it was the 1970s if I'm not mistaken, and essentially this is a reprint, re-release, whatever you want to call it. But without further ado, we're going to get right on ahead with what this game is similar to. As far as similarities are concerned, there are two major ones that I wanted to mention, which sort of combine their mechanics together to give you an idea of what Downforce does. The first one is Formula D. Formula D, obviously a racing game where you have F1 race cars. In that game, you roll dice in order to move around. In Downforce, you use cards, but you do have that similar Need for Speed type of feel, like, you know, that kind of thing. For the second similarity, we have Camel Up. Again, another racing game, but one where, like Downforce, you're sort of removed from the action a little bit. In Camel Up, you are only moving the camels by random chance. You've got the little pyramid with the dice, essentially, but the big thing is you have a betting mechanic. In the end, for Downforce, the whole point is that you want to have the most money at the end of the game. It doesn't necessarily matter who actually wins the race. All that matters is that you made the most money. And you do that by a really interesting pen and paper betting mechanic that I really enjoy. So in that sense, very similar to Camel Up, but without further ado, we're going to get right on ahead into how to play Downforce. Alright everybody, we're all set up and ready to start playing some Downforce. Setup for this game is extremely simple. All you do is just randomly place all of the cars at the start line, and then we distribute evenly the cards that will allow us to move them throughout the game. And essentially with this game, the idea is that we are just trying to have the most money. It doesn't necessarily matter who ends up winning first place. All that matters is who has the most money at the end of the game. So throughout the game, what we're going to be doing is the first thing is we'll be purchasing cars, and then after that we will be betting on who's going to win at these thick yellow lines, and throughout that time we are going to be moving all of the cars with our various cards in some way, shape, or form. So just the anatomy of these cards, each one has up to 6 different colors on them, with the colors corresponding to the individual car colors. And the way they work is when you play the card, then that means that you are going to move the cars in order from top to bottom on the card. Essentially in this case, I start off with red, move it 6 spaces, and then I'll move yellow 4, black 2, and blue 1. There are certain powers that can adjust that, but I'll get to that in just a little bit. And essentially that is what your turn is. You play one card and then it moves to the next player. And I'll get into some of the log jams and stuff like that that make this game really strategic and fun. Now, at the very beginning of the game, we are going to be bidding and purchasing cars that we will control for the game. And essentially the important thing for this is these are the cars that we own. If you own a car that places that gets a good spot, then you get a big payout at the end of the game. So this is where your cards come in handy. You want to look at them and see which ones do I have a lot of stake in, which ones do I have a lot of movement for that I'll be able to really get around and move them rather quickly forward. The other thing to note on these cards is that some of them have wilds, which are represented by a sort of white stripe, and that essentially means you can move any car of your choice as long as that car color does not appear somewhere else on that card already. And so we'll look through these, see what we want to buy, and then we go into the bidding phase or the auction phase, whatever you want to call it. All that happens is we flip up one card from each of these stacks. This card will represent that the person owns the red car, and it represents an 8 movement. It's a single use 8 movement only for the red. And then you also get an ability, in this case cunning, where you always move your car even on other players' turns. So that means if I control the red car and this person over here plays a card that will move red, then I choose where I go instead. And again, I'll explain why that's important a little bit later on. So essentially now we do bidding. The way it works is we pick a card that shows that color. For example, I could play this card. This one has a red 1 on it. And what we'll do is we'll all put the cards face down, flip them up. Essentially, I bet $1 million to get the car. Whoever bids the most gets it and writes down how much they paid for it under the column auction price on their little sheet. And essentially, that's deducted from your final winnings. And so that's done. So then I would take these in my hand, for example, and then I would take the red control. Now, all of the cars are going to be owned by some players, okay? Each player can own more than one, but each player must own one. So in other words, if you've got, in this case, I've got 3 players, if one person controls 4 cars, then they will not be allowed to bid on the next 2 rounds, so that the other 2 players would essentially be forced to purchase one each. And that means that at the end, whatever car is left over, if everyone else has one and you're the only one left without one, you can really lowball it, right? So strategically, let's take a look. Let's say that we just randomly sort of distribute this stuff. So let's say they'll get that, and let's say they'll get that one, blah, 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 blah. Again, it really makes no difference. Whoever is first, which means that the person who controls the car on this first spot, in other words, orange in this case, let's just dig through till we get orange. There you go. So this person would go first with orange. So the way that movement works in this game, let's say that I'll play this card. Notice here we've got 6 black, 5 orange, 4 yellow, 3 blue, 2 red, and 1 green. What are my powers? Aggressive, if you play a card with your at the top, then you may move your car an additional space. Determined, on any other player's turn, if your card is moved in only rectangular spaces, you may move it 2 additional spaces. So the powers really can make a huge difference. Essentially, the way movement works, you may move diagonally if you're not blocked, if there's not a car in front of you. So I could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the black, and then moving the orange, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then moving the blue, 1, 2, 3, moving the red, 1, 2, and then moving the green, 1, just like that. That's essentially how the movement works. It's very, very simple. Now what becomes interesting is when you can create congestions. So for example, if I don't really like somebody particularly, then I can force a blockage somewhere. So let's see here. Let's say, for example, that orange was right there. You notice that there's only 1 asphalt spot there, and I really need to play some card. Let's say I really have to play this one for whatever reason. Then it moves green 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it moves black 5, 1, and then you can't go past an opponent if they are blocking you. So in other words, most of that 5 movement is now gone, and so the black player will just be like, grrr. So that's a lot of the setup that you can end up doing. You can also do this on straightaways, where for example, if you can set this up, and then if you have, say blue is right here, and you end up with a blue 6, you can force the blue car to move into this little catty corner, and then they can't move past again. So instead of moving 6, they only moved 1. And this is really where the strategy of the game comes into play and how you use your personal cards. And it's always a great idea to be out front, but it's not necessarily the best option. Now moving forward, that's the strategic and the moving aspect. Next up are the betting lines, these big yellow lines right here. At each one on our betting sheet, we have bet 1, bet 2, bet 3. Now what we do here is we just bet who is going to come in first place. That's all it is. It's just who's going to be first, not second, not third. You just put an X, a check mark, whatever it happens to be, and your bids are secret. You don't show anybody who it is. It doesn't have to be your car. It can be somebody else's. It makes no difference. The entire point, again, at the end of the game is you just want to have the most money. So even though I don't own orange, I might be like, wow, orange is out front. Bam, I'm going to bet on them. And then at the end of the game, if orange wins and they get first place, I would get $9 million because I bet on the winner, essentially. So after everything goes around, Whoever crosses the finish line gets first place. We go around, we keep going, and then let's just put these in randomly here. So whoever owns the top 5, so these top 5 will get payouts for whoever controls the cars. Whoever bet on the top 3s to win first place would get money from the bet 1, 2, and 3s, depending on what it is. And then you would calculate how much you paid for the auction price and how much you won for both your bets and your racing payouts, and that's how much money you got. Whoever has the most money wins. So again, most of the strategy in this game is about how you move the cars around with your individual cards, as well as betting on the right horse, even if it means you're not betting on your own. But with that, I'll go right on ahead into my general conclusions as well as pros and cons. Moving right into pros and cons for this game, the biggest pro for me is honestly that I simply love it. This is a really great game. I am generally not a big fan of racing games, but I like the fact that it's relatively quick. I love the fact that it's so easy to pick up, and I also love the fact that it sort of combines multiple mechanics together. I really enjoy auction mechanics. I really enjoy these sort of starting power type of mechanics, and I love the strategic aspects as far as when you're going to play your cards and how you're going to move the vehicles around, not to mention the fact that just because your car isn't winning doesn't mean that you as a player are not winning. Another big pro for me is the diversity in the number of players. Being able to play from 2 to 6 people and actually have fun with it is a really rare thing that you don't see too often in board games, especially ones like this, because more often than not it's going to be really imbalanced in one way or the other. And so the idea also is that you as a player have to make sure that you try to balance it out and you don't spend too much in order to buy the cars and that kind of stuff. So it's all part of the strategy, which is a ton of fun. A couple of cons, relatively minor. The first main one is essentially that I am hoping that they're going to do expansions for this, because I can see having a lot more tracks, a lot more powers, maybe like some unique movement cards, all of that kind of stuff. Don't get me wrong, it is still fun and I really do honestly enjoy it, but similarly to Camel Up, we had sort of the same issue where when you're just playing the base game, it's kind of like meh. But then you add that really cool modular expansion that Camel Up had, where you have like the photography aspect, you have the longer track, all of that kind of stuff, and it really drastically changed the game. I would love to see something similar with a Downforce, so that you get a little bit more oomph with it, which would be a lot of fun. The second really major con is the downtime in this game. When other people are going, they will be moving your car unless you have the specific power that allows you to move it off of your turn. And so the problem becomes, it's really boring when you're waiting for a bunch of people. Now, it does play 6 players and it does play it well, and especially after everybody is sort of used to what they're doing, it can move relatively smoothly. But until that happens, it tends to chug along pretty slowly, and it can become a little bit frustrating. But other than that, I really don't have a whole lot of cons for it, and I honestly just enjoy the experience overall. And even though I'm not playing actively the entire time, it's fun being able to see and watch and sort of try to plan ahead and that kind of thing. But overall, Downforce, absolutely great game. Really enjoy it. Even if you're not a big fan of racing games, I really do recommend it. If you don't really enjoy the really larger scale things that end up with some analysis paralysis and things like that, potentially not really for you, but still give it a try with fewer players, I would recommend, because it is still an experience that is worthwhile. Thank you very much again for watching this. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.